There you go. Perfect. Okay, so it's 7:10, so I'm going to begin. So welcome, everybody. Welcome to this next in the series of talks that I've been giving while the coronavirus is keeping some of us locked down. Depending on where you are in the world, you've got different degrees of lockdown. So I hope that everybody gets out to ride soon, but let's just get going. So this talk tonight is about my 21,000 mile ride around the USA. And I put this slide up first because this is going to be a bit of a theme because, I firmly believe that everybody should have a dream. And if you can, you should try and achieve your dream. Having something to look forward to is really quite important. And the talk tonight is really about, it starts off with me setting out a long time ago that I had a dream and eventually being very fortunate to achieve that dream. So this line, which I will talk to you about this evening, really represents to me the achievement of a dream, and all will become clear as we talk through. So what am I going to talk about tonight? It's in 4 parts tonight. Part 1 is the background to my USA journey. Part 2 is planning the America trip. Part 3 was riding it, 21,475 miles. And part 4 was something I didn't really ever intend to do, and that was writing a book about it. And then at the end, we'll have some time for questions. So a lot of you know me, but for those who don't, let me quickly introduce myself. Clearly I'm an avid motorcyclist. I live in the UK. I'm British. I live just north of London. I rode when I was very young. Here are my first 3 motorcycles that I had. The one on the right, the Suzuki GT 750, was a fantastic bike. I loved that. But then, like most people, I got married, I had kids, and I had to sell the bike and get a more practical car to carry everybody around in. I bought my first Harley, a Road King, this Road King, in 2006. And I retired from my main career, which was in construction project management, in 2010. And I did my ride around the USA on that very Road King, my very first Harley that I bought. I wrote a book about that trip called France in America. There's one on the bookshelf behind me, and I'll tell you a bit about that later. I've ridden in 28 different countries and 29 different states. So I guess you could say that I like riding quite a bit. In 2013, I set up and I now run a company called Tour One, a Harley-Davidson motorcycle touring business. But on more to the point of what we're talking about, background to the USA trip. Now, this journey started, or the idea of the trip around America, the idea of it started a very long time ago when I was 13. My father suddenly died, and that affected me very badly. I became very withdrawn as a child, and I was terrible at anything academic. I left school at 16 with virtually no qualifications. Money was very tight, and there were 3 of us kids, and my mum did a fantastic job in trying to raise us on her own. Life was quite hard. We moved into a small council flat. We moved out of a nice leafy suburb house. But because I was the eldest son, I felt almost compelled to leave school to try and help help my mother with some finances and help pay for the family. I used to ride a bicycle to work when I was 16. I rode 13 miles there and 13 miles back. And that meant that I had very muscular legs, a very thin 26-inch waist, and I looked a bit like, well, not a bit like this, I looked like this. I had very long hair. But riding a bike, a push bike, a cycle to work, for a year, I got very tired of cycling to work. I did it in the rain, the snow, the fog, the hot sunshine, and I didn't enjoy it. And I desperately wanted to be cool. And I didn't think I was very cool. Well, looking like that, I wouldn't be, would I? So I went out and I saved up and I bought myself a motorcycle. I really wanted to be cool, so I bought one of these. Okay. perhaps not very cool, but that motorcycle, led me to loving riding motorbikes. I loved it. It gave me a lot of independence, a lot of freedom, and I wish I still had that bike today. I was working at the age of 16 in the office of a construction company. I was a draftsman drawing plans. And like nearly everybody else, I had a couple of weeks holiday. I couldn't afford much. So that was in the UK. Lots of my friends went traveling. They went to university. They had a lot of fun while I was working. But that actually suited me. That structure of being in work gave me a lot of guidance. And by the time my friends left university, I'd actually been working for 5 years. So that suited me. And it gave me a sort of a kickstart into my career. But I missed traveling that my friends did. I missed my father a lot, obviously. And it was about the age of 21. I can't really remember exactly when it was, but I made myself a promise. And it went something like this. As I've missed out on some important things, when I'm older, I'm going to make up for that in some way. I didn't know what that was going to be. I thought it would be some sort of an adventure, something to give back to myself for what I didn't really have in those earlier years. And I'm so lucky that I managed to keep that promise to myself about 37 years later. So riding a Harley-Davidson, I was chatting earlier with Michael, and we were talking about when you buy a Harley-Davidson, it means lots of other things. I thought I was buying a Harley, just a motorcycle. But of course, I discovered what hog was, I discovered what a chapter was, and I discovered all the other things that go with, owning a Harley and the friends that you make along the way. I rediscovered my inner child as I rode away from the dealership on my Harley. Yeah, I was riding along. There I was, and yeah, I think I look cool looking in the shop mirrors, in the shop windows as I was riding along. I went on quite a lot of hog chapter ride outs, a few European rides to Spain, to Austria, to France. And yeah, I really liked that. I liked long distance motorcycle touring, and it gave me a lot of fun. But I'd worked for 37 years in construction, and I must admit I was tired. I was tired physically and emotionally. There was a lot of stress in what I did. I worked very long hours, and I'd sort of had enough. I'd done very well going from a draftsman to jointly owning a project management firm. But I was sitting just after Christmas. It was, the 28th or the 29th, and I was actually in America. And I felt as if I really wasn't looking forward to going back to work in January. I wasn't looking forward to the early mornings and that stress all building up again and the dark mornings. So I decided to retire there and then. And what the first thing I wanted to do, I thought back to when I was about 21, and I promised myself that adventure that I promised myself years ago that I would actually do it. So I decided to ride a motorcycle in America. I didn't know where I was going to go, but I knew it was going to be something pretty special. I was very lucky that my wife fully supported me, and she said, "Look, fine, go. Go and enjoy yourself, and you deserve it." So that was all good. So that was the background to the tour. Planning the trip, I then got my teeth into a bit, and I did no more than I thought, where am I going to go? So I actually bought a big cork board, a notice board. I bought a map of the whole of America, and I just started putting pins in it, saying, where do I want to go? How am I going to try and plan to see all these things? So those places included things like New York, Harley-Davidson in Milwaukee, Chicago, Sturgis. Of course, I had to go to Sturgis. I'd never seen Yellowstone. I'd read a lot about the Rockies. I wanted to see Monument Valley, Death Valley, etc. So there I went, just putting all these pins in, and thought, okay, that's where I want to go. And then it became quite clear. I then got a little bit of string, and I literally did it with some string. And I just started to join together some of the pins, and it became relatively straightforward and relatively obvious that if I followed that sort of a line, I would pick up most of the places I'd want to see. Not everywhere, but like over 90% of them. So that was the beginning of planning the tour. And I thought, if I start in the north of the USA in the summer, that would mean that by the time I got down to the really hot desert states, it wouldn't be so hot because it will be a few months later. And it also meant that I would be going through South Dakota in about August, which meant that I could go to Sturgis, one of the places that, ever since owning a Harley, I thought I must go there. So a sort of a plan emerged. But I had loads and loads of questions that I didn't know the answer to. And these are some of them, like what sort of riding would I do? Well, I didn't want to ride on big roads. Who does? I wanted to see the real America. So I wanted to go on back roads. Yes, I did want to plan the trip in a fair degree of detail because I wanted to make sure I'm not going to miss anything. This is like, if it's a once in a lifetime trip, well, you don't get a chance to go back and do something you missed. So I wanted to get it right first time. I had no idea how far I would ride each day. And even when I set out on the trip, I really didn't know the answer to that. I thought it would take a few months, but I wasn't sure. Luckily, I didn't have an end date that I had to stick to. I knew I was going to do it partly on my own. I didn't know where I was going to sleep, probably hotels. Did I want to rent a bike? Did I want to take my own? Did I want to buy one? Well, I didn't really know. So finances actually determined that. To rent one back then for 4 months would have cost about $13,000, considerably more now. There were some issues with buying one. Would I be able to get one in time? Could I then sell it? But it soon became obvious that taking my own Harley would not only be very cool, it would probably be the cheapest way of doing it as well. So I decided to take my own. How much would it cost? I had no idea. So I obviously needed to create some sort of a budget. Okay, so then I went into the real research stage, and I fully admit that I did it in a way that not everybody would. I would probably do it in the research in a lot more detail than a lot. Because if you think about my career, what I'd done is I had worked on some very large construction projects throughout the world. And my job was to work out, I was the strategist for how these will be built. So planning was sort of ingrained into me. There's the London Eye, the London 2012 Olympics, and the Sochi Winter Olympics in 2014. They're the sort of mega projects that I worked out how to build. So I did a lot of planning. So planning a tour around America would be fairly obvious that that's what I was going to do. I bought a load of books about the best scenic roads in America and scenic highways. And that was great because that taught me a lot. So I marked the particular roads that I read about on that large map and sort of joined them together. And then that gave me a much better idea of my entire route, the ones that I would take and that I wouldn't. And that was really the beginning of how I was doing the planning. I then did a lot more detail. I bought state maps, guidebooks. You looked on the web. There wasn't really so much stuff, but there is now. I know where to look. I had a big question. Was I just going to use maps or was I going to use a sat nav? That sort of determined itself relatively early. I really enjoy riding with a sat nav or a GPS because it takes all the stress away when you're riding. I don't have to think now, Highway 27 is down here somewhere, but I can't remember if I was meant to go east or west. Have I missed it? All I had to do was look down and say, okay, I'll turn left in 3.7 miles. To me, that just makes it so much more enjoyable. Do all the work beforehand, and then it's much easier when you're on the trip. So I planned a 13,000-mile ride around America. I ended up doing 21,000, so that shows that I did do a bit of winging it and a bit of going off track to see particular places that I looked at when I was there. Shipping the bike to the USA, that I had no idea how to do that, not a clue. But I found a company called James Cargo based at Heathrow, and they did motorcycle shipping. So I went to see them and they told me all about it. So they booked the flights, they created the bike. There's quite a lot of complex paperwork to do for US customs. But all I had to do, they did all of that. All I had to do was deliver the bike to them 2 days before I wanted it in America. They made it very easy. Finding motorcycle insurance was not so easy because, being a foreigner within the USA, riding a foreign bike, that is actually quite a challenge, and I couldn't find anywhere that would do it. My UK insurance wouldn't cover me. I didn't have a US address. Well, I did, but I would be lying if I gave that address because I didn't live there. So no American company would insure me. But I did eventually find a specialist company called Motorcycle Express. If you're ever thinking of doing anything like I did, these are the only people that I could find who did insurance that I needed. So I was all set, looking good. It was I don't know, maybe a month before I was due to leave. And I thought, have I got everything? I thought, oh no, look, a USA visa. Well, that just means getting an ESTA, doesn't it? No, because I was going to likely be gone for more than 90 days. I needed to go to the US Embassy in London, set up an appointment, be interviewed by them, take bank statements along and all sorts of stuff. And I thought, oh no, is it going to arrive in time? But luckily it did. Just a few days before I was due to fly out, there was the visa, came back in my passport. Excellent. I didn't really do much to my bike. I wondered about, because I knew I was going to go through Death Valley, did I need to put an oil cooler on? But I was told no. I obviously had it serviced. I checked and changed some tyres, did a few other bits and pieces. And then again, not too long before I was due to go, I thought, okay, everything's done. Why don't I have a custom paint job done on the bike at the last minute? Yeah, that was good planning, wasn't it? So I had that done. I liked 1940s and 50s actresses. So there's the bike after it had the paint job done. And as you can see, I've had some portraits of actresses painted in black and white on it. I think the painter who did this, bear in mind, he did this by hand. He did a remarkable job. So I was accompanied by 10 leading ladies, and the bike got the name The Leading Ladies, and I've still got that bike now. So I flew out. Well, I delivered the bike to Heathrow. They crated it. There it is being crated. And it was put on a plane with petrol and oil in. I was staggered. Just a little bit of petrol I was allowed. And I packed my bags and flew the next day. Okay, part 3, riding in the US. Well, I got a cab from JFK Airport into Brooklyn. This is looking across the East River. And then it actually struck me. I was here. I was about to do it. I'm about to ride my own bike around America and get that adventure, or have that adventure that I'd always promised myself, or that I knew I wanted to do. So that was quite a realization when I was sitting in that cab. Thought, yeah, this is happening. So I got to the hotel, unpacked my bags, got some tools out, and got in a cab and went to the cargo area of JFK, finished a few bits and pieces of customs, which is quite difficult, but I went in there with the attitude. The customs people in New York, they're known to be quite not very friendly. So I just walked in there and I just said, look, I'm a shipping virgin. You're going to have to help me out. They just burst out laughing and said, come on, I'll help you. And so it turned out to be relatively easy. So I uncrated the bike and I rode the first 11 miles in America, in New York City, from the airport to the hotel. And I don't mind telling you, I was pretty scared. I was riding in New York City with mad traffic flying about, riding my own bike on the wrong side of the road. I didn't really know where I was going because I'd forgotten to put the hotel in the sat-nav. And so I needed to fill up with fuel quite quickly because there wasn't much in there. And I pulled into the scariest looking gas station in America, filled up and then got out of there as quick as I could. So I was quite relieved when I got to the hotel. But that was the total extent of my worries. That was quite an eye-opener, those first 11 miles in riding in New York. So from New York, I rode up to the far top right-hand corner of Maine to a place called Calais, named after Calais in France, although they pronounce it Calais. And then the idea was I would ride from the top right-hand corner of America to the bottom left-hand corner. So for me, the tour officially, or the trip officially started up there, and I rode through Maine, New Hampshire, Massachusetts, Rhode Island, beautiful Vermont, and I did about 2,500 miles in New England. Some photos of that. Here it is looking, New York, looking across the Hudson River. This is obviously Times Square at night, and that's looking across the East River at night. I love that. I love that picture. This was riding down the coast. We stopped at a friend of mine, Paul Rose, came and did the first couple of weeks with me, and we ate quite a few lobster on that first part, because lobster are so cheap in Maine because they catch so many. So we saw many lighthouses, fabulous houses on the beach, and this is me standing outside of Orange County Choppers, because at that time I quite enjoyed that show while they were still talking about motorbikes. This was in Salem, in Massachusetts, is it? No, New York State, I think. And this is where, so many years ago in 1692, they hanged 19 people, mainly quite young girls, for being witches. That was a bit tough to take, looking around that cemetery. I put this picture in. This is where I stopped at the side of the road. I think this was the first 1,000 miles I'd done. And aside from the fact that there's a yellow line down the middle of the road, not a white one, and that I'm on the right-hand side of the road, this could almost be somewhere in England. New England really is like England. It made me feel quite at home riding through there in the first few weeks. I love these two bridges, the old one that suddenly began to fail, so they built a new one right next to it. And I love this bridge too. This was an old railway bridge, which the local ladies association took over when the railway was abandoned, and they turned it into a beautiful garden. I love that idea. I thought that was very cool. By the way, all of the pictures in this presentation and in my book I took something like 25,000 photos on this trip, and perhaps that's one of the reasons why my tour took 4.5 months, because I stopped and took loads of pictures. Next, I moved on to the Great Lakes states. So that's back through New York, Pennsylvania, Ohio, in Indiana, Illinois, and up into Wisconsin. And I did about 2,000 miles there. This part of America's very beautiful. This is in Pennsylvania. Saw lots of rivers, lots of lakes, and I thoroughly enjoyed this area. I'm particularly proud of this photograph of Niagara Falls with the rainbow and the Maid of the Mist boat just cruising through it. I love Niagara. It's a really good place to go to. This was pretty scary, actually. This is at the top of the ski jump in Lake Placid, where they had the Winter Olympics. I can't remember when, but standing up on the top of a ski jump, I suddenly had a massive, respect for ski jumpers. How could you stand there and put 2 bits of wood on your feet, slide down that, and then jump into that field below? Absolutely incredible. I then saw a few tractors in a field. This is in New York State, and I had to turn around and go back. And I met the farmer. I went and knocked on his door and said, "You got to tell me the story of these tractors." His name was Tony Trombley, and he loved John Deere tractors, and so he had hundreds, and he loved showing them off. And literally, he just parked them in this field, put them all in a straight line, and made a bit of a view of it as people drove past. This is, we were talking about Chicago earlier, talking to Chris, and Chicago is my favorite big city in the USA. I do love it. And so this is looking from the, it looks as if I'm on a boat. It's actually from the observatory, looking back across the water to the Sears Towers and all of the tall buildings there. This is the Bean, which was one of Chicago's Millennium Celebration projects. I actually used to work with a guy who, when he went back to Chicago, built this. And so obviously I needed to go and see this. It is quite remarkable how they keep it clean, and the reflections, I don't know. It was steaming hot in Chicago. And yeah, even I got in here to try and cool down a bit. I love this picture of the canyons of walking through in amongst the tall buildings, and the light striking that lady's hat. But when I was in Chicago, I actually went to Chicago Harley-Davidson and had my bike service. There it is. It was quite a funny story. I turned up there about 7:15 in the morning, got there quite early, and was waiting there, and somebody else was waiting, and the guy was complaining that he had to wait months because it was the summer to get his bike serviced. And he said, "When did you book your service?" I said, 2 days ago. He was not best pleased. So I'd done about 5,000 miles. I just rang ahead, and I've got to say, wherever I wanted something done to my Harley when I was on this trip, everybody dropped everything. If you're on a road trip in America, you ring up and you say you're on a road trip, they truly do bend over backwards to help you. I had 3 services done on the trip. It was all very easy. I had a few new tires, and only one thing went wrong with the bike, where the gear change linkage goes into the engine casing itself. There's a very small O-ring where the tube, where the shaft goes through, and that seal had gone. So I had a very small oil leak, which took no time at all to fix. Of course, I wanted to go to see the Harley Museum in Milwaukee. I'm sure many of you have been. I was quite impressed. There's the Captain America and the Billy bike from Easy Rider. The tank wall, I really like that. That's a 1957 Sportster flathead. And of course, there's Evel Knievel's Silly. It's not really a motorbike, is it? It's a jet bike. It's a rocket. Some very early bikes. I was impressed with the museum. It wasn't as big as I thought it was, and some of it was quite dark, but I was so glad I went there and had a look. It really did tell you the story of Harley-Davidson. Then the next was the Midwest states. They're not really west at all. They're in the center of the USA. So I went, well, the main place I wanted to go here was South Dakota because of Sturgis. But I did about 3,500 miles in the Midwest states. And here's some pictures. I woke up one morning in Pipestone on an Indian reservation, and this was the view out of the window. So it was a glorious morning. So I had to snap that. These areas, I think this is in Ohio. It really is the where they grow most of the crops or a lot of the crops in the USA. It's known as Big Sky Country because the ground is the landscape is relatively flat. The roads are so straight, and it just seems that the sky is a lot bigger because you can see so much of it. I think there was quite a lot of flooding here. And I think those skid marks on the road tell a story of a few people just about managing to stop in time. This was my favorite place to eat in America on the whole trip. And I'll tell you why. This is in Ohio. I was really in the back streets. I hadn't seen anybody or any town for a long while. And I found this little cafe, and I just parked the motorcycle outside, walked in, and they said, "Oh, we're really sorry, we're just closing." Granny was in there with her 70-odd-year-old assistant. So I said, "Oh, no worry, I'll find somewhere else." And they said, "Well, that's a funny accent, and why have you got a big yellow license plate on the back of your motorcycle? You're not from here, are you?" And they said, "Come on, sit down and we'll make you something to eat." They only made me a sandwich, but I sat there for a couple of hours chatting with these ladies. It was absolutely wonderful. I really enjoyed it. And it's those sort of things that are very memorable about the tour. It's not necessarily just what you see, it's the people that you meet. This was in Nebraska. Lots of people said, "Why are you going to go to Nebraska?" Lots of Americans I chatted to, there's nothing there. And they were right, there was nothing there, but it is very lonely and very sparsely populated. But that's why I wanted to go. I wanted to see that. And this is quite funny. I think the capital of Nebraska is maybe called Lincoln. And as I left Lincoln and set out on this road, my sat-nav said to me, "Turn left in 256 miles. I thought, okay, this is going to be quite an interesting road. It turned out it was very interesting. It was a beautiful place to ride through, with some wonderful scenery, but not many people. As I got closer to the border with South Dakota, there were thousands upon thousands of bikes on the road because, of course, I was approaching Sturgis. I think they got something like, they estimated 700,000 or 800,000 bikes in Sturgis for that year. And there's actually that picture there. You can see my Road King in the middle. They allowed us to park our motorcycles in the courtyard, and they even gave us hotel towels to clean the bikes with. Talking of hotels, this was actually the easiest thing to organise, because I didn't know how many miles I would do each day. I didn't want to be constrained by booking hotels ahead and having to get to particular places. I wanted the flexibility. So I wanted to just wing it in terms of hotels. And all I did was about 5 o'clock each evening, I just looked in my sat nav, put in places of interest, found hotels, and just found the nearest hotel. And that worked really well. I stayed away from big chain hotels, although I did stop in a Holiday Inn Express each week, because they had a guest laundry and I was able to clean my clothes. I'm getting quite a few messages coming up, a few notes. Let me just see what people are saying. Okay, yeah, I don't need to read those. They're just comments. The exceptions of booking hotels were Sturgis, the Grand Canyon, and Monument Valley. Sturgis, I obviously had to book somewhere there. I booked that about 18 months in advance. I booked somewhere at the Grand Canyon. Monument Valley, I didn't, but I should have done, because I stupidly arrived in Monument Valley about 5 or 6 o'clock in the evening, tried to find a hotel, and there was nothing. So I called Jackie, my wife, and I said, quick, help, I need you to find me a hotel. So she got online, and she eventually said, after about a quarter of a minute, she said, oh, good, I found you a hotel. I said, great, where's that? She said, it's in Page, which is about 154 miles away from where you are. That was the nearest hotel. So I had about a 2 or 3 hour ride. So I got there quite late. So if you're going to Monument Valley, the lesson is book your hotel. Sturgis, what a place. Absolutely amazing. Bottom left-hand corner of South Dakota. I met these people on my way into Sturgis, riding through the Badlands. What makes Sturgis so impressive? Oh, this is the Badlands itself. A series of sandstone bluffs that have been worn away by the weather. Incredible riding. But what does make Sturgis so nice is the people that you meet there. You meet every walk of life. This is Main Street in Sturgis, and I love looking at the bikes. I love looking at her. She was quite nice. But real characters that you meet there really make it something. He was just so funny. I loved him. This couple, he was absolutely brilliant. So I had to take pictures of some of the people that I met just to remember it. And some of it's quite funny too. This guy was really nice, riding with his dog on the back of his bike. Really memorable people. I did make one mistake. I decided to go and ride the Needles Highway and in Custer State Park one afternoon. Don't do that, because you're riding it with about 50,000 other people. And so this is the Needles Highway. And riding through this very famous tunnel through the rock. It's one way. They can only put vehicles one way at a time. And so we had to wait a very long time. So these pictures were actually taken. I went back. This is about 5:30 the next morning, and there was nobody there. So that was a glorious bit of riding. This, I think, looks like I imagine this as the backbone of an extinct dinosaur. I was a bit disappointed, not disappointed, but surprised by Mount Rushmore. It was nowhere near as big as I thought it was. And if you look here, the trees are normal tree sizes. So the faces are about twice the height of of a tree. It wasn't as big or as grand as I thought. This is something, you know, quite else. I can't think of the name of it now. It'll come back to me. This is going to be an amazing statue when it gets finished in about 500 years' time, because it's so huge, being carved out of the mountain. Riding in the Rocky Mountains was something else. This was about 4,500 miles through Wyoming, Utah, and then into Colorado. I loved Colorado. It was fabulous. This was a bison in Yellowstone. There's a funny story about this particular bison that I won't bore you with now, but it's in my book, and about just how threatening it was to a group of motorcyclists. This is some of the scenery, and this is the Blue Pool in Yellowstone, an absolutely staggering place. The Yellowstone River. This is in the Rocky Mountains National Park, just north of where Steve and Cindy live, who are online. A very cute little harmless squirrel, and a not so cute and not so harmless attack helicopter. Here's a funny story. This is the Teton Mountains, and I rode past this about 3 or 4 o'clock in the afternoon, and the sun was behind the mountains and it was ruining the photo. So I got up very early the next morning, about 4 o'clock in the morning, because I wanted to get there before the sun rose. And so I was riding in the dark. It was freezing cold. It was a lot colder than I thought it was. And I knew where to park because I'd sussed it out the day before. So I got to the car park and I had to walk about, I don't know, about 10 minutes down to the edge of Lake. I think this is called Lake Jenny. And as I was walking, I saw a sign saying, bear area, take precautions. And I thought, okay, if there's a bear here, I've got nothing on me. I haven't got any gas. I haven't got a gun. All I've got is my tripod, a camera. I've got a candy bar, a chocolate bar in my pocket that I could try and tempt it with. And I thought, there's not going to be anything here. I took about 2 more paces and I heard something in the bushes. I thought, oh, blimey, I do hope that's not a bear. And so I set up my camera, took this picture, and I don't mind telling you, I got out of there pretty quickly, just in case. I've got no idea what it was, but I didn't stick around. This is the Durango to Silverton Railway. I actually took that photo from on the train. It's a great train to go on. I absolutely loved it. Colorado National Monument. I think this is Garden of the Gods. These are all fantastic places to go. And this was the 10,000 mile point on the trip. So I stopped and took that photo. I'd heard, lots of American roads, they're okay, but they're all straight and boring, aren't they? Well, this one isn't. This is the road going up to Pikes Peak, an absolutely fantastic road. And throughout the Rockies and loads of places in America, roads are definitely not straight and they're not boring. This is Beartooth Pass, and I felt as if I was looking down on the world there. That was fantastic. Another great road, Highway 150, I think, the $1 million highway that goes from Durango to Ouray. Absolutely fantastic. I think I rode this road about 9 times just for the fun of it. Lots of people would get very scared, and I really, really hope they don't put a barrier along there, because it just makes it interesting. Being a lover of the movie Close Encounters of the Third Time, I had to go and see this, Devil's Tower in Wyoming. This is interesting. This is at Canyon City in the south of Colorado. This is the only road, or one of the only roads I know, where you've got drop-offs on both sides. It's not a very long road, but it does make it interesting. I love exciting roads like this. Wouldn't be for everybody, but I liked it. Finally, the bottom left-hand corner, the desert states of Utah, Arizona, Nevada, and California. Yes, I did 8,500 miles just riding around these few states, and this is probably my favorite area. This is in Arches National Park. The national parks in America are stunningly beautiful. If you go to America, definitely go to as many national parks as you can. This is Antelope Canyon in northern, is it in Utah? It's near Page. I love this. This is uh, I looked at, this is Zion National Park, and this made me think that the mountain was actually breathing. Zion National Park again here. And then one of my favorite places in the USA, this is Bryce Canyon. It is stunningly beautiful. How, you know, nature can form this just with water and wind erosion is amazing. Just look how beautiful it is. I love going there. Another favorite place of mine, I'm not a very religious person, but I found Monument Valley did something to me. It had a spiritual feeling to it. I took this picture very early in the morning. Again, the sun was in the wrong place when I went there first time in the afternoon. And you can tell by the shadows on the bike that it's, you know, very long shadows. This was about 5:30 in the morning again. Gave a very warm glow to the place. Yep, objects in your mirror are closer than they appear. Love that photo. Monument Valley is stunning. You know, what nature does, or what nature did to wear away all the land to leave these buttes sticking up is amazing. This was actually on Indian land. I shouldn't have really been there. I was pushing my luck, but I wanted to get this picture of Agathla Peak with my motorcycle in front of it, riding along the Colorado River. Again, this is in Monument Valley. I think, I can't remember where that is. This is Corona Arch, quite a good name for today. I had to walk quite a long way to get there, but again, well worth it. Canyonlands, stunning, absolutely amazing place. And I expected John Wayne to come riding across the valley here at any moment. This was interesting. I rode up to Dante's View, looking down on Death Valley. Absolutely amazing. I think they'd had something like almost 3 months of 100-degree weather. That's what I mean. It didn't go below 100 degrees. It was pretty hot, but a fabulous road up to Dante's View. A really, really good riding road. This is Zabrinski Point in Death Valley. And of course, in this area, you've got the best parts of Route 66. This is Hackberry General Store. And look, there's 2 crash helmets on my motorcycle there because Jackie, my wife, came out for a couple of weeks and joined me here. You know, we based ourselves in Flagstaff and went to a few different places. She absolutely loved that. And I love the T-Bird sitting there underneath the overhang of the shop. Yep, loads of you will have been here. Grand Canyon. This is obviously Las Vegas. I did book a hotel room here just before I got there because I wanted to stay in the Bellagio and get this view. Stunning view. And of course, it's no longer there, but this is the Harley-Davidson Cafe on the strip, and I wanted a picture of my bike in front of the Harley-Davidson Cafe. So that's quite a cool picture. And then finally into the desert states. This is it's completely gone. What's the name of it? Can't remember what it's called. Idiot. Well, that's Half Dome in this national park. That's Bridal Veil Falls. Oh, that's bugging me now. Yosemite, of course. And when I went across the mountains to go to Lake Tahoe, I was shocked to see that it had been snowing. But Lake Tahoe, stunningly beautiful. What a place. This is quite interesting. I took this picture, and here's a good tip for you. If you're going to go on a trip like this, do some research beforehand and look at where great pictures are taken from. I actually researched this and worked out where the photographer had taken a very similar picture. And so I knew before I left London exactly where I had to stand to take that picture. And I knew what time of day as well, late afternoon, to get the sun on the Golden Gate Bridge to give it that wonderful red glow. This was quite good. I met up with some people and they said, come to dinner. And this is in California. And they said, there'll be a few of us at dinner. I got there was about 20 people there. And I ended up sitting opposite a guy who said that he'd done quite a lot in the motorcycle industry. He said that he'd invented a bike called the Triumph Hurricane. I thought, well, that rings a bell. He said he'd designed quite a few fairings for motorcycles. And I said, "Are you Craig Vetter?" He said, "Yeah, I am." I was sitting opposite having dinner with Craig Vetter. That was pretty cool. This is then finally riding down Highway 1. This is near Big Sur. I was very lucky to get this picture of a surfer coming off the back of a wave. If you look very carefully at the original picture, you can just see the surfboard below his feet. But I think that was a fantastic pose that he did for me. This is Big Sur itself and the mist rolling in off the sea. Beautiful part of the world, Santa Barbara. This is Venice Beach. And of course, I had to get a picture of my bike in front of the Hollywood sign in California. I didn't go into the Beverly Hills Hotel, not even for a coffee, but I wanted a picture of my bike outside of it. And this was another interesting road, just in the mountains behind LA. That was quite good fun. I think I rode that about 5 times. Tend to do that. And this was the last picture. I think the very last picture I took on the trip. This is the USS Midway. And I went onto the ship and looked at there's quite a few planes on here. But the really good thing was talking to the veterans who actually served on the ship and flew the planes, while it was in service. It was a real joy to talk, to stop and talk to them. So I did 21,475 miles overall in 4.5 months, visited 27 states, and I did an average of about 177 miles a day. Not too much. Right at the end, this was this was the thing that probably made me laugh the most. It's a bit rude, but I'm going to say it anyway. So I was in San Diego. I checked into a hotel and I had all my gear, and I was in the elevator going up, and a man and a very smartly dressed businesswoman got in. And the guy, seeing my T-shirt, said, "Harley man, huh?" This is almost verbatim. And I said, "Yep." And he said very proudly, "I've ridden a long way to get here. I've ridden 700 miles from Redding in Northern California." I said, "Wow, that is a long way," something like that. He said, "Where did you come from?" I said, "I've just done 21,000 miles since I left New York City." And he just stood there in the absolute silence with his mouth hanging wide open. But it was what the lady said. Smart businesswoman, just standing there listening to the conversation. All she said was, "Holy fucking crap." I just cracked up. It was so funny. It was so unexpected. That was pretty funny. So how did I feel about the trip overall? Well, I experienced the freedom of the open road without a shadow of a doubt. This was a stunning trip. You feel, as you know, on a motorcycle, you feel the wind, you hear the sounds, you feel the temperature change, and you smell things that you just don't get in a car. And so, I felt as if I was part of what I was riding through, not just looking at it from inside a car. I'd had a very stressful business career, and so I wasn't sure just how relaxed I was going to be able to be on this trip. But this was a sort of a great way of transitioning from that business environment into my retirement. It really did make me a bit more relaxed. The roads were absolutely fantastic. America is a stunningly diverse country with incredible scenery, and it is very, very welcoming. Everywhere I went, I was welcomed by everybody. And the trip was absolutely fantastic. And yes, I completely and utterly fell in love with America. And of course, there was only one motorcycle I could do that on. That had to be a Harley-Davidson. And I'm so pleased I took my own road king and did it. And if I ever go back to ride the other states, I've kept that motorcycle so I can do that. And it wasn't until I was in Los Angeles airport, right at the very end, I was sitting there waiting for my plane, having a coffee, and lots of people were going backwards and forwards, in their own little bubble, trying to get their own planes. And I thought, I've just done something incredible. To me, it was incredible. And none of these people even know one thing about what I'd just done. And so I decided to write a book about it there and then. It was actually sitting in the airport. I had enough pictures, and I thought, I will write a book. So the last part, very quickly, it took about a year to write that book up here. There it is. And I'd never done anything like this. I'd written lots of technical reports and papers throughout my career, but nothing even sort of remotely creative. So the book struggles to understand what it is. You know, it's a story of a trip. It's how somebody changed. It's a guidebook. It's full of photos. It's got many tips and ideas. And it is a big, heavy book for those of you who got it. You know, I jokingly say it's a coffee table book. You could actually make a coffee table out of it. It's so big and heavy. So if anybody wants to buy it, don't buy it on Amazon. Just Google Gary France book and buy it through that, and you'll get it cheaper. If you're on my website, there it is. That's how you buy the book. Yeah, and some people have said some lovely things about the book, which makes me very, very proud. I've also written a few guides, motorcycling guides about riding in America. If you're ever going to go across and do your own sort of trip or even just riding in there, you'll find these on the Tour One website. They're absolutely free. You might get some ideas to what you might do. So that red line that I showed you at the beginning, well, to me, that represents something quite amazing, because it was obviously the route that I took. And that for me is the achievement of my dream from a promise that I made myself 37 years previously. So that line actually means quite a lot to me. And so thank you for listening. That is the story of my 21,475 mile ride around the USA. And so I'm going to stop sharing this now. And it's always good to turn this back on, because I can see that you're all still there. That's good. So so what I'm going to do, I'm going to unmute your microphones and see if anybody's got any questions.
Bravo, Gary. That was great.
Oh, God.
Absolutely.
Really good.
Yeah.
Thank you very much. Thank you. It was quite a journey, and I was very, very lucky to be able to do it. I don't underestimate just how lucky I was.
It was your book, Gary, that I read and marked nearly every page to mark up for our 6-week tour that we did when we went over 3 years ago. So thank you very much.
Well, that's good. I love the fact that people actually do and have used it to plan their own tours. That's yeah, that really means a lot to me, Alan. That people did find it useful enough. It's a big book. Here it is, and just listen. As you don't, what you definitely don't want to do, don't read it in bed, because if you drop it on yourself, you don't want to go to the hospital at the moment.
We should read it out loud together.
How much do you think the whole trip cost, Gary?
How much did it cost? I would say I budgeted on about $100 a day. Bear in mind this was nearly 10 years ago, so $100 then got me a hotel room, my food for the day. The fuel is dirt cheap in America anyway. So and I didn't eat. I ate in a bar. I had a beer and a hamburger each night. I ate quite cheaply. So it was quite expensive, I've got to say. But you can do it cheaply. You can stay in Motel 6s and places like that, which I did a few times. That was interesting. But I was never brave enough to add it all up, and I certainly didn't tell Jackie how much it was.
I will just say this.
For 4 months. Probably getting off 10 grand.
Wow. That's not too bad.
Okay, any more questions?
Gary, did you have any close shaves at all?
I only had one close shave. I'm quite a careful rider, but one.
Missing over this way.
Gotta be kidding, Gary.
Yeah, okay. All right, I used to be a careful rider. One lady pulled right across me. She just didn't see me, and that was quite close. But the scariest moment I actually had was in Niagara Falls. This was quite surprising. I took a wrong turning and ended up in the wrong part of Niagara. And I stopped at a traffic light, a red light, and there was a gang of about 6 or 7 not very nice looking young men heading towards me. And they were obviously intent on doing something wrong. So I don't mind saying that taught me a lesson about whenever I stop anywhere at a red light, I never stop close to the vehicle in front of me. I always leave a gap so that if necessary, and this is what I did on that occasion, I just rode around the car in front and went through the red light. And so that was the only time that I actually felt in any way worried. But no real close shave. It was a joy to ride. Americans, forgive me for the Americans that are watching. Americans change a lot in towns and in small places. They are the politest drivers. They stop for pedestrians. Generally, they are very, very safe drivers. But you get them on a highway, they turn from these, completely docile, really nice people into madmen. They drive very fast. They swap lanes very quickly. So I can see Stephen.
I would agree.
Smiling, laughing, and it really is like that. So just avoid highways. That's the safest thing on the motorbike. Just don't go near interstates.
Yeah.
Hey, Gary. Dave Podorgal here. I'm right outside of Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania. And,
Hi, Dave.
I found out about this on your Instagram, and I'm glad I joined. Thank you for the kind words you've said about America. That's really great. Really appreciated. My wife and I both ride. We do a lot of the tours in our own country here. And I spent 2.5 years living in the UK and Scotland when I was stationed in the Navy back in the 80s. So shout out to all the folks here from UK. You treated me fantastically while I was a serviceman in your country there up in Scotland, and spent some time in the borders in London and doing all that stuff. But I'll tell you what, the great thing about watching this and hearing what you had to say, my wife and I were planning an Edelweiss tour next year, but my plans just changed. I'm on your website here. I knew you did these tours, but now, seeing you speak about America and everything and looking at your page, I think we're going to probably go with your tour next year. One of your tours when things finally
They're
open
great.
up.
I'll drink to that, David. That's very kind of you.
Yeah.
Thank you.
And
Cheers.
if you ever come back, there's a lot like looking at your map. There's my wife and I just did a 5,500 mile trip in 2 weeks this past September, going into western Texas and Arkansas and Oklahoma and Mississippi and Alabama. But if you come back someday, you'll have a place to stay in Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania with me. And we can hit some great stuff on the East Coast, like West Virginia. It's one of the best states for riding, and even Ohio, Virginia, and places like that. Definitely look forward to meeting you next year on one of these trips, maybe the Adirondack trip.
That's very, very kind of you, David. Thank you. There are, I still have 23 states that I've not ridden my Road King in the USA, and being a sort of a person who likes looking ahead and planning, I've actually sort of planned a tour of those other 23 states. It's a long way ahead.
You need to do the Smokies.
Yeah, definitely. I will,
Yes.
Chris. Definitely.
Yes. Smoky Mountains.
Yeah.
Also, like, believe it or not, being in America, I've only missed 3: Hawaii, Alaska, and believe it or not, Rhode Island. It really isn't far from me.
Where would you go if you're planning
Later on this summer, we plan to do Montana, Wyoming, Glacier. But yeah, I'd love to have you back in our country.
Okay, we're getting a bit of background chatter. So, look, does anybody have any other questions? Before we call it a day, it's 8:10. I like to try and keep it to about an hour. Anybody got any questions about the trip or anything else?
Just a quick question, Gary.
Gary, hi. I've just got a quick question. You said you did 3 services on your bike.
Yes.
Did you plan specifically which cities, or did you just sort of go off the mileage and think, right, I'll take it in?
No, I didn't plan them at all. I just looked at, I kept an eye on the mileage, and when I was about 500 miles short of needing a service, I just rang somebody a couple of days before, thought, well, I'm going to be there. So, I just rang a dealer and just planned it and didn't plan it at all. No. So, no.
Okay, thank you.
Gary, just a quick question here. How much
Sure.
of the journey did you ride on your own?
90% of it.
Okay.
Yeah.
With hindsight, would you have liked to have had a buddy with you?
Do you know what? I've quite often wondered about that. I really like riding with other people, but I also really like riding on my own, because you're riding on your own. You can stop when you like, you can go when you like, you can eat when you like. So you get much more freedom, Robert, if you do it on your own. So I actually quite enjoy the solitude of doing it on my own.
Yeah.
No.
Thanks for that, Gary.
Okay, Robert.
I really enjoyed your talk.
Take it easy.
Sorry, Gordon.
Thanks a lot. Good to see you.
Okay.
Take it easy.
Will you let us know when you're coming back?
I certainly will. I certainly will. Yeah, I don't have a date yet. I'm not sure when it will be, but I definitely intend to do it. I'm 63 now, so it'll be within the next 7 years without a doubt.
I get older in a couple of years, Gary. I'm going to hit the big 40. Getting really old.
Shut up, Gordon.
You're off, Gordon.
That's weird. I'm the youngest person here.
You are, Chris.
Somebody had a hell of a paper on then.
You probably are,
Harley's
Chris.
problem.
Yeah, you probably are.
And you're a cool one vet.
Yeah.
Part of Harley's problem.
Okay, well, it's been absolutely fantastic seeing so many of you here. Thank you for listening in. I hope that you all get to do some riding and that you all stay safe. Keep an eye out.
See you next
One
week.
of these public talks, about one a week. So I'm not sure what the next one is. It might be planning your own European motorcycle tour. And I'm actually going to talk specifically for Americans about coming to Europe to ride. Not on my tours, but generally. So, so thank you all. It's been a pleasure to see you all, and keep safe.
You too.
Gary. Gary. Gary.
Take care. See you all soon.
Bye.
Bye. Bye.